This is Jason Leopold reporting for Truth Out. Time magazine has called Ralph Nader one of the most influential Americans of the 20th century. His activism has led to the creation of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and the Safe Drinking Water Act. But he's still best remembered as the man whose 2000 presidential bid, critics say, helped George W. Bush steal the presidency from Al Gore. But now Ralph Nader can add a new title to his lengthy resume, novelist. He recently published a 736-page book, Only the Super-Rich Can Save Us, in which 17 aging billionaires use their wealth to set off a progressive revolution. Ralph Nader, thanks for taking the time to speak with Truth Out.
You're welcome.
Your book, Only the Super-Rich Can Save Us, what is it that you think we need to be saved from?
Well, from the concentrated power of multinational corporations over our government. It's a corporate state, almost clinically defined. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt warned against this in 1938. Any government that's taken over by private economic power, he used the word, he said that's fascism.
Now, you have a list, or the characters in your book, the 17 aging billionaires, if you will. What sort of personal relationship do you have with these individuals in real life?
Well, obviously I've followed them over the years. I've read their biographies, their articles, their testimony. About half of them I've actually interacted with, like Ted Turner and Phil Donahue, the late Paul Newman, Peter Lewis, Joe Jamale, and others I've been in touch with since the book came out.
Have they done anything that you believe with their wealth that amounts to setting off a progressive revolution, so to speak, as you discuss in your book?
Well, most of them have engaged in regular philanthropy, and most of them have also engaged in some cause that involved a collision of power. For example, Warren Buffett joined about 1,000 rich people a few years ago to preserve the estate tax from its dissolution by the Republicans in Congress. And that's tough stuff.
Yeah.
And Phil Donahue, who's been in the area of media reform. So most of them have engaged in one way or another in policy advocacy, not soft philanthropy.
I understand that you don't really like the book being called a novel or fiction, but you do describe it as a practical utopia. How did that, you come up with that phrase?
Well, it's fictional, but it's not a novel. Historically, our country has benefited from practical utopias or utopian fiction. One of the more prominent ones was in 1898. Edward Bellamy wrote Looking Backward. It was a 1 million bestseller then. It infused and gave a vision to the progressive movement that was really expanding then. Eugene Debs would refer to it from time to time, for example. But in the last 50 years or so, we just haven't done much practical utopian fiction. In fact, this caused Russell Jacoby, a sociology professor in Southern California, to write a book 10 years ago called The End of Utopia.
Right.
And he was excoriating the academic world for being very stagnant in their imagination about what our society could be like, what our world could be like.
Yeah.
So I floated this giant tome in big print, which in effect is very realistic once you accept the predicates of what if multi-billionaires were serious about changing course in this country? What if they had a top-down, bottom-up grassroots mobilization? What if they were ready to recruit hundreds of thousands of people and go flat out in the media and create a people's chamber of commerce, a sustainable and intelligence-gathering sub-economy in the sectors all over, a Congress watchdog groups in every congressional district, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What would happen? And that's the rest of the book.
Now, you said it takes place in 2006. Was Hurricane Katrina, was that a symbolic moment in terms of where you think everyone was able to get together and agree that the current state of the world was or at least the U.S. rather, was at its low point?
Yes. Hurricane Katrina's aftermath and its preventability represented a paradigm case of a society stuck in traffic, Washington in gridlock, and the corporations feeding off the disaster and trying to convert New Orleans into an entertainment center with a largely depleted minority population other than performing servants.
Right. In terms of the job that Obama is doing right now, and obviously he's trying to get the healthcare reform passed. What's your assessment of the performance thus far?
Well, he is a concessionary politician. He doesn't like conflict, doesn't like taking on the corporate powers. He demonstrated that as state senator in Illinois, as senator in the U.S. Senate. He is what might be called a concessionary personality, a harmony ideology. In Washington, you project that from the White House, and the shark tank known as the Congress will eat you alive. It's not only the Republicans, because the blue dog Democrats saw a weakness in the White House on health insurance reform. In fact, they didn't even see a proposal that Obama could mobilize the people around the country. They split. So they broke his majority control of the House. And Senator Baucus is proceeding to break it in the U.S. Senate. He's lost huge momentum, and one major reason why he's done it, other than his concessionary personality, is he's turned his back on liberal and progressives who elected him. He doesn't invite them, for the most part, to the White House, but he invites the CEOs of the drug companies, of the auto companies, of the banks, and he bails out these crooks on Wall Street. And so, in effect, he's anesthetized his left hand, and he's expected to have a strong right hand under these conditions. He may have been a great campaigner. He's a terrible politician.
Well, he's only been there for 8 months. Do you think that the 8 months represents any bit of a learning curve?
That's a good point. If you didn't know his personality, which is one of offering compromises before they're forced on him, for example, I would say let's give him more time. I can almost predict with certainty that what you've seen in the first 9 months, you're going to see for his tenure as President of the United States. And he's also demonstrated enormous aggressive potential, such as in Afghanistan. And that's going to be his Vietnam.
How do you think this will play out? What will happen at the polls, do you think?
It could be like 1994 when Clinton lost the Congress to the Gingrich forces of reaction. And I say that because even Bob Herbert, the columnist for the New York Times, who's flat out from day one supported Obama, about 3 weeks ago, had a column saying that more and more of his friends are saying to him, Obama is treating us like we have nowhere to go. So even he is becoming really quite skeptical. Now, if enough Democrats are disturbed about the lack of leadership, the excessive concessions that he's made to the opposing forces, if they stay home and the right wing, like vultures being encouraged to bring out their vote, it could be a loss of the Congress the way Clinton lost in 1994. So he's got to be very careful. It's not too late to turn it around, at least to preserve Congress.
Do you think that the public option is a good compromise or something that is acceptable?
It's a tippy toe. It won't do what it's purported to do, but it'll do something. It will allow people not to be forced to buy insurance from the crooked health insurance companies because they'll have, in effect, a Medicare-type option. But only a few million people will be allowed to use that. So I think that my friends on Capitol Hill, like Henry Waxman and Ed Markey, and Barney Frank, basically say that this is just round one. And if it succeeds, fine. They don't think really it's going to succeed to the extent of a single-payer full Medicare would. So this is round one. The next round will be maybe in a couple years, and that's going to be the single-payer round. Now, suppose 8 or 9 multi-billionaires want to go down in history the way Tommy Douglas is viewed by Canadians as the greatest Canadian because he started single-payer health insurance as Premier of Saskatchewan. Suppose they want to go down in history as rising from material success to significance. They throw $1 billion and they say, okay, to the best organizers, the best media people, so on, you're going to go for single payer. I wouldn't bet against them.
Yeah.
Because a third of the members of Congress are already for single payer if there's a private vote. 83 in the House have already put their names on H.R. 676. The majority of the people are for it, majority of doctors in a recent very good poll, and an even greater majority of nurses. So there's no imagination at all.
Your activism in the 60s and going through the 70s has resulted in the creation of the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Safe Drinking Water Act.
And on and on.
And on and on, yes. Forgive me. What impact do you feel that you've had over the past several years? What kind of change do you feel that your activism has, what sort of change has that resulted in?
Well, I think Congress has shut us out, and not just us, our groups. I think they've essentially, whether they're Republican or Democratic controlled, with a few exceptions like Congressman John Conyers, have shut us out. The corporations just everywhere. They get their top officials running cabinet secretaries and agencies. They got 9,000 political action committees with, saloons pouring the money as we speak into their coffers. And both parties are dialing for the same commercial dollars. This is a very low point in terms of Washington, D.C. There used to be a time in the 60s and part of the 70s when they really got a lot done. The whole framework of the environmental, consumer, worker safety, civil rights movements were established in those years. But, when people don't spend any time back home on their members of Congress, for heaven's sake, if they had a neighbor that knocked on their door and said, "Hi, I spend 22% of your income. I can raise your taxes. I can send your children off to war. I can make sure chemical companies expose you in air, water, and food to toxic chemicals by doing nothing. See you later." You don't think that person who opens the door will want to monitor regularly that neighbor? That's your Congress. And yet the members of Congress are so entrenched through gerrymandered districts. Over 90% of the House of Representatives elected officials never have to worry about being defeated. It's just every 2 years, re-election, re-election. We don't have a competitive democracy, and we're getting the bitter fruits of that.
What's next for you in terms of what you will be doing in the political arena?
I want to see a major historical progressive convention convene to sort of elevate the whole progressive movement with a thorough agenda of empowerment and substantive justice and very substantial financial resources. Because the progressive movement is, if it's not demoralized, it's fractured. If it's not indentured to the corporate Democrats, it doesn't really have a sense of pride and identity for what its forebears delivered to the American people. And the second thing I'd like to do is maybe this book will stimulate some billionaires and mega millionaires who are enlightened and in advanced age and have no axe to grind, who come forward and take their great cause, whether it's the boomeranging war on drugs, prison reform, $1 billion here, $1 billion there with smart strategy and all the wonderful grassroots natural talent that never has any resources to show its strength. You can't believe the change. Our expectation levels are so low, it can represent one of the most brilliant controlling processes of giant corporate power in the history of the world. All they got to do is keep our expectation levels down.
Ralph Nader, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.